My name is Jason and I'm 32 years old, working as a mechanic in a small town in Texas. My wife Rebecca is a teacher at the local school. We got married 7 years ago and I thought I knew her better than anyone else in this world. How wrong I was. It all started last spring when Rebecca decided to visit her cousin Caitlin in Los Angeles. She said she wanted to take a break from the routine, see the ocean, feel young again. I supported her. Teaching is exhausting, especially in our small town where parents constantly complain about everything. The trip was supposed to last a week, but Rebecca came back changed. At first, I couldn't figure out what exactly had happened, but she became somehow absent, dreamy. She talked about how beautiful Los Angeles was, how people there were more open to new things, how she felt truly herself for the first time in many years. A month after returning, she announced that she wanted to move to California. I was stunned. We had never discussed such a possibility. Our life was here, my business, our friends, the house we had renovated together. But Rebecca was determined. She said she felt trapped, that she needed changes. I agreed. I closed my workshop, sold the house below market value to close the deal faster. We moved to Los Angeles in the fall. Rebecca was glowing with happiness and I was trying to adapt to a new life in a huge city. At first, everything seemed fine. I found a job at an auto service center. Rebecca got a teaching position at a school near Caitlin's house, where we temporarily stayed. But soon I noticed that my wife was spending more and more time with her cousin. Caitlin worked as a fitness trainer and had her own yoga studio. Rebecca started attending her classes daily, then they would go to lunch together, to movies, to concerts. I was glad she found support in the new city, but gradually I realized I was becoming redundant in their company. When we finally found our own place, Rebecca insisted that Caitlin help with the setup. They spent entire weekends together, choosing furniture, decor, discussing every detail. I worked Saturdays to earn extra money for the new house, so I barely participated in this process. One day I came home from work early and saw them on our couch. They were hugging and watching a movie and it looked intimate. Not just like friends or relatives but something more. When they saw me, they quickly moved away from each other. I started paying attention to small details. Rebecca now always took her phone with her to the bathroom. She would smile while reading messages but quickly hide the screen when I approached. She developed new habits, new expressions that she obviously picked up from Caitlin. The worst part was that she started avoiding intimacy with me. At first, I thought it was stress from moving, new job, adaptation. But months passed and the distance between us only increased. The breaking point came one Saturday in December. Rebecca said she was going with Caitlin to a yoga retreat in the mountains for the weekend. I stayed alone, trying to understand what was happening to our marriage. Sunday evening she wasn't answering calls. I worried, thinking about an accident or some problems. Monday morning Rebecca finally called. Her voice sounded strange, as if she had been crying or hadn't slept all night. She said she needed to talk to me when she got back that evening. That day at work dragged on forever. I knew something serious was waiting for me, but I couldn't imagine how serious. In the evening, Rebecca sat across from me at the kitchen table and started talking. She told me about how during that first visit to Los Angeles, something fundamentally changed in her life. Caitlin showed her another world where people could be open about their feelings, regardless of what they were. Rebecca realized something important about herself. She had always hidden part of her personality. My world started crumbling when she confessed that she had fallen in love with Caitlin. Not just as a friend or relative. Real love that she had never felt before. They had been together for several months, and Rebecca could no longer live a double life. I sat and listened as my wife told me that our marriage was a mistake, that she had forced herself to be someone she wasn't really, that she had never truly loved me but only thought she did because it was right, because society expected it. The most painful part was that she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was just stating facts. She was gay, she was in love with Caitlin, she wanted a divorce. All of this sounded like a lecture she had prepared in advance. I tried to understand if anything could be fixed, if there was any chance for our marriage. But Rebecca was categorical. She had found her true self, and there was no way back. She had already consulted with a lawyer and knew how to process the divorce as quickly as possible. The following weeks were a nightmare. Rebecca moved in with Caitlin temporarily, until she found a separate apartment. But I understood it wasn't temporary. They didn't hide their relationship. They went shopping together, to restaurants, held hands in public. I felt used. It seemed to me that I had been deceived not only about Rebecca's feelings but about our entire life. The move to Los Angeles wasn't a new beginning for the two of us, but a plan for Rebecca to be closer to Caitlin. The hardest thing was realizing that all these years I had been living in an illusion. Every kiss, every "I love you," every intimate moment, all of it was acting on her part. She was playing the role of a wife and I didn't even suspect it. The months leading up to this revelation were filled with small signs I should have noticed. Rebecca had started working out more frequently, claiming it was just to stay healthy. She would spend hours on the phone with Caitlin, often speaking in hushed tones that would abruptly stop when I entered the room. There were new books appearing on her nightstand, self-help books about finding yourself and living authentically. I remembered how excited she had been about Pride Month that year, insisting we watch documentaries about LGBTQ+ history. At the time, I thought she was just being supportive as an educator. Now I realized she was trying to understand herself better, maybe even testing my reactions. The changes in our physical relationship made more sense now too. What I had attributed to stress or the natural evolution of a long marriage was actually Rebecca pulling away because she was discovering who she really was. She would flinch slightly when I touched her, as if my touch reminded her of the lie she was living. During our conversations in those final weeks, Rebecca tried to explain that she hadn't intentionally deceived me. She genuinely believed she loved me when we got married. Growing up in our conservative small town, she had never even considered that she might be attracted to women. She did what was expected, dated boys, got married, tried to be a good wife. But meeting Caitlin had awakened something in her that she couldn't ignore. Caitlin was openly gay, confident, living life on her own terms. She helped Rebecca understand that the restlessness and dissatisfaction she had always felt weren't character flaws or signs of depression. They were signs that she wasn't being true to herself. Rebecca described the moment she realized she was in love with Caitlin as both terrifying and liberating. It happened during that first visit when they were walking on the beach at sunset. Caitlin had taken her hand and Rebecca felt something she had never experienced before, a completeness, a rightness that made everything else in her life feel like she had been sleepwalking. The guilt had been eating her alive for months. She had tried to fight her feelings, to convince herself it was just a phase or confusion. She had even suggested we start trying for children, thinking that might help her recommit to our marriage. When I expressed doubts about having kids right then due to our financial situation and the move, she was secretly relieved. She told me about the nights she would lie awake next to me feeling like a fraud. She would think about Caitlin's laugh, the way she moved, the conversations they had about art and life and dreams. Then she would look at me sleeping peacefully beside her and feel overwhelmed with shame and confusion. The yoga retreat had been the final straw. Caitlin had organized it specifically so they could have time alone together to figure out what they wanted. By the end of the weekend, they both knew they couldn't continue hiding their relationship. Caitlin had given Rebecca an ultimatum: either she told me the truth and they could be together openly, or their relationship had to end. Rebecca chose Caitlin. Hearing all of this didn't make it hurt less, but it helped me understand that this wasn't really about me failing as a husband. This was about Rebecca discovering a fundamental truth about herself that she had been suppressing for years. In a way, I was just collateral damage in her journey of self-discovery. The practical aspects of our divorce were surprisingly smooth. Rebecca wanted to get through it quickly and with as little drama as possible. She didn't ask for alimony, didn't fight me on property division. She just wanted her freedom and the chance to start over with Caitlin. But the emotional aspects were devastating. I had to tell our families and friends back in Texas what had happened. Some were supportive, others were judgmental. A few suggested that Rebecca was just going through a phase and might come back to me eventually. Those comments were almost worse than the ones that blamed me for not being man enough to keep my wife interested in men. My mother took it particularly hard. She had always loved Rebecca like a daughter and couldn't understand how someone could just change their sexual orientation overnight. I tried to explain that Rebecca probably didn't change, she just finally admitted who she had always been. But my mother struggled with that concept. The hardest conversation was with Rebecca's parents. They were devastated and angry. They blamed Caitlin for corrupting their daughter, blamed Los Angeles for being too liberal, blamed me for allowing the move to happen. Rebecca's relationship with them became very strained, which made me feel somewhat guilty despite everything. I found myself in the strange position of sometimes defending Rebecca to people who were trying to support me. Yes, she had hurt me deeply, but she hadn't done it maliciously. She had been trapped in a life that didn't fit her, and when she found a way out, she took it. I couldn't really blame her for that, even though it destroyed my world. The months following our separation were the loneliest of my life. I stayed in Los Angeles for a while, trying to rebuild some kind of life there. But everywhere I went, I was reminded of Rebecca and our failed marriage. The apartment we had decorated together, the restaurants we had visited, even the grocery store where we did our weekly shopping, everything held memories that were now painful. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who specialized in helping people navigate divorce and infidelity. She helped me understand that what I was experiencing was a form of grief. I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing my entire understanding of my marriage and my life. The person I thought I had been married to for 7 years had, in many ways, never existed. Dr. Martinez also helped me work through my anger and feelings of betrayal. While Rebecca's coming out wasn't her fault, the way she had handled it, the months of deception, the emotional affair, the decision to uproot our entire life for her benefit, those were choices she had made. I had a right to feel hurt and angry about those choices. Slowly I began to rebuild my sense of self. I realized that I had lost myself somewhat in the marriage, always trying to make Rebecca happy, always accommodating her needs and desires. I had become Jason the husband instead of just Jason. Now I had to figure out who Jason was on his own. I started taking night classes in business management, thinking about maybe opening my own auto repair shop again someday. I joined a hiking group and discovered I really enjoyed being outdoors. I even tried dating again, though that was complicated by my trust issues and the unique nature of what I had been through. The few dates I went on were awkward. How do you explain to someone that your marriage ended because your wife realized she was gay? Some women seem to take it as a challenge, as if they could prove that I was desirable to the opposite sex. Others seem to think there must be something wrong with me if my own wife preferred women. Both reactions were uncomfortable. After about 8 months in Los Angeles, I decided to move back to Texas. The city held too many memories and I missed the familiarity of home. I found a job at the auto shop where I had worked before getting married, and my old boss welcomed me back with open arms. It was humbling to return to my hometown as a divorced man, but also oddly comforting. People here knew me before Rebecca and they would know me after her too. The pace of life was slower, the complications fewer. I could focus on healing without constantly being reminded of what I had lost. I bought a small house on the outskirts of town, nothing fancy but mine alone. I decorated it the way I wanted, bought furniture that I liked, created spaces that felt authentically Jason. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life instead of trying to accommodate someone else's vision of what our life should be. Rebecca and I maintained minimal contact after the divorce was finalized. She sent me a text on my birthday and I sent one on hers. She seemed happy with Caitlin, and I was genuinely glad for her, even though it still hurt. At least one of us had found what they were looking for. About a year after I moved back to Texas, I ran into my high school girlfriend Sarah at the grocery store. We talked for a while, catching up on each other's lives. She had also been through a divorce, though for more conventional reasons. Her husband had cheated with his secretary. We laughed about the cliches of failed marriages and agreed to get coffee sometime. Coffee led to dinner, which led to a very slow, careful courtship. Sarah understood trust issues because she had them too. We took our time getting to know each other again, building something solid and honest. When I told her about Rebecca and what had happened, she listened without judgment and told me she was sorry I had been hurt so badly. The hardest part, I told Sarah one evening as we sat on my porch watching the sunset, wasn't that she was gay. It was that she let me believe for so long that we had something real when she was already questioning everything. I would have supported her figuring herself out if she had been honest with me. Instead, she made me complicit in her lie. Sarah nodded. She was probably trying to protect you, she said. And herself. Coming out is scary, especially when you have so much to lose. Maybe, I agreed. But it would have been easier to lose our marriage honestly than to have it taken away through deception. 2 years after the divorce, I was in a much better place. Sarah and I had been dating for almost a year, and while we were taking things slow, I could see a future with her that felt real and honest. I had opened my own auto repair shop, which was doing well enough that I was thinking about hiring an assistant. I had rebuilt my relationship with my family and made peace with most of what had happened with Rebecca. I still thought about her sometimes, wondering if she and Caitlin were still together, if she had found the happiness she was looking for. I hope she had. Despite everything, I didn't wish her ill. She had been trapped in a life that didn't fit her, and when she found a way out, she took it. I couldn't really blame her for that, even though the way she did it had nearly destroyed me. The experience had taught me a lot about myself and about relationships. I learned that love isn't enough if it's not built on honesty and authenticity. I learned that you can't save a marriage by yourself, and you can't love someone into being something they're not. Most importantly, I learned that I was stronger than I thought I was, capable of surviving even when my entire world fell apart. Looking back, I could see signs that I had missed or misinterpreted. Rebecca's lack of enthusiasm for physical intimacy, her fascination with LGBTQ+ issues, her restlessness and dissatisfaction with our life. But I also realized that even if I had noticed these signs, it might not have changed anything. Rebecca had to come to her own understanding of who she was in her own time. 3 years post-divorce, I received an unexpected email from Rebecca. She was writing to apologize, she said, not just for the divorce but for how she had handled everything. She had been in therapy and had come to understand how much damage her deception had caused. She didn't expect forgiveness, but she wanted me to know that she was sorry for the pain she had caused. She also wanted me to know that she and Caitlin were still together and were planning to get married. She hoped I could be happy for her, but she understood if I couldn't. She ended the email by saying that she hoped I had found or would find someone who could love me the way I deserved to be loved. I read the email several times before responding. In the end, I wrote back a brief note thanking her for the apology and wishing her well. I meant it. I was happy that she had found herself and found love, even though it had come at such a high cost to me. Sarah and I got engaged that fall. When I proposed, I was completely honest about my fears and my baggage. I told her that Rebecca's betrayal had made it hard for me to trust completely, but that I was willing to work on it if she was patient with me. She said she understood and that we would build something together based on truth and openness. Our wedding was small and simple, held in the church where I had grown up. My family was there, as were Sarah's parents and siblings. A few old friends from high school came, including some who had known Rebecca and me as a couple. It felt good to be surrounded by people who had known me before I became defined by my failed marriage. As I stood at the altar waiting for Sarah to walk down the aisle, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The pain of Rebecca's betrayal, the months of loneliness and self-doubt, the slow process of rebuilding my life and learning to trust again. It had been the hardest thing I had ever been through, but it had also made me stronger and more self-aware. Sarah looked beautiful in her simple white dress, and when she smiled at me from the back of the church, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Rebecca's confession, complete certainty about my choices and my future. This was right. This was real. This was built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect that would last. We've been married for 2 years now, and while it hasn't always been easy, my trust issues sometimes surface, and Sarah has her own baggage from her previous marriage. We work through problems together instead of hiding from them. We've built something authentic and strong, something neither of us has to pretend about. I still run my auto repair shop, and it's doing well enough that I've been able to hire 2 full-time mechanics. Sarah works as a nurse at the local hospital, and we're talking about maybe starting a family in the next year or 2. It's a simple life, but it's genuinely ours. Sometimes people ask me if I'm bitter about what happened with Rebecca. The honest answer is complicated. I'm not bitter about her being gay, that's who she is and she deserves to live authentically. But I am still sometimes angry about the deception, about the way she made major life decisions for both of us based on information she kept from me. If she had told me she was questioning her sexuality, if she had been honest about her feelings for Caitlin, we could have handled things differently. Maybe we still would have gotten divorced, but it could have been done with respect and honesty instead of lies and betrayal. I could have been a partner in her journey of self-discovery instead of a victim of it. But dwelling on what might have been isn't healthy or productive. What happened happened. Rebecca made the choices she made, and I've made peace with that. I've learned to focus on what I gained from the experience rather than what I lost. I gained self-reliance and independence. I learned that I could survive having my world turned upside down. I discovered interests and aspects of my personality that had been dormant during my marriage. Most importantly, I learned what I actually need and want in a relationship, which made it possible for me to build something real and lasting with Sarah. Rebecca taught me, inadvertently, about the importance of authenticity in relationships. Her inability to be authentic with me ultimately destroyed our marriage, but it also showed me how crucial honesty and openness are for any relationship to work. Sarah and I have built our relationship on that foundation, and it has made all the difference. Looking back now, I can see that my marriage to Rebecca was built on an illusion from the very beginning. She was trying to be someone she wasn't, and I was in love with that false version of her. When the real Rebecca finally emerged, there was no place for me in her life. It was painful, but it was also necessary for both of us to find our authentic selves. I don't regret marrying Rebecca. Those 7 years weren't entirely a lie. She did care about me, and we did share some genuine moments of happiness and connection. But I also don't regret that it ended. If it hadn't, I never would have found Sarah, and I never would have learned to be comfortable with who I really am. The experience changed me in ways that I'm still discovering. It made me more cautious but also more appreciative of genuine connection when I find it. It taught me to pay attention to red flags and trust my instincts, but also to be open to love when it's real and honest. If I could go back and change things, I'm not sure I would. The pain was terrible, but it led me to where I am now, and I'm genuinely happy with my life. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up being the things that teach us the most about ourselves and what we're capable of surviving and overcoming. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.